Welcome to Something to Talk About from the Bainbridge Island Senior Community Center. We check in with folks 2 or 3 times a week. You can find out what and when by going to biseniorcenter.org/calendar. Today, we're going to be talking with Amii Thompson, who's the superintendent of Bainbridge Island School District. She was appointed directly following the resignation of Peter Bank-Knudsen. And I want to mention briefly that we are grateful to Fieldstone Communities of Bainbridge Island, which sponsors Something to Talk About. To find out more about their programs, call 206-594-1010. Amii, thank you so much for making time for us today. I appreciate it. And I can imagine that there is with us in the middle of a levy vote and everything else that's going on, you transitioning, the challenges that are going on with the school district right now, giving us a few minutes is really, really appreciated.
Sure, of
So,
course.
I'm just wondering if you might talk. I know that you've been in the district for a long time. You were assistant superintendent. So just tell us a little bit about what you're focusing on, what you're trying to bring in this time of transition for the district.
Sure. Yeah, I have been in the district for quite a long time. I began in the district in the year 2002. I get confused if it's 2002 or 2003 at what is now Halilt Elementary. And I taught second grade there. I've also been a teacher at Ordway. I taught first grade there for 1 year. And then I went back and taught at Halilt after being in Vancouver, Washington for a few years. I was back at Halilt for I believe 7 or 8 years as a first grade teacher, a second grade teacher, and I taught in our first and second grade multi-age program. When I became a principal, I was associate principal at Sakai, and then I was principal at Halilt for 6 years. And then I've been at the district office for 3 years as executive director of teaching and learning for kindergarten through 6th grade. And then it was recently moved into the assistant superintendent role when Deputy Superintendent Erin Murphy left for superintendency, and we combined positions. And so I really was in the assistant superintendent role for only a few months. And then when Peter resigned, was moved into the role as acting superintendent through June of 25. You know, I've been in this role now 4 weeks. It feels like it's been 4 years. And, you know, I've talked to so many people. I've been really going out and meeting with a lot of our community members, our PTOs, all of our staff, some students. And there's kind of a couple of different things that I focus on. The first is just the acknowledgement of the transition of leadership and to let everyone know that Peter is okay. And I've worked with him for a really long time, and I know he's been a part of our community for a long time, and I think that that's really an important thing to do. The second is to kind of highlight a couple of the key pieces of things that I'm working on. The very, very first thing is to understand our budget deficit and to really critically look at that number to determine if that seems to be an accurate projection. And so one thing that I think is really, really important is you have to take a critical look at not only the overall budget, but also our enrollment and our enrollment projections. And so what I've been doing the last several weeks is working with a core team here at the district office. We have a regional service district, so the Olympic Educational Service District, finance director, or he's actually assistant superintendent of finance, Jason Rhodes. And then we've hired a financial consultant. His name is Stephen Nielsen, and he used to work in Seattle Public Schools in-house and in the Puget Sound Educational Service District, serving all of the districts in the Puget Sound region. So in that process, what we're doing is we're taking a really, really careful look at our budget, really in depth, to see our spending patterns, to see that we are on track with our budget allocations, and to really look and determine if our budget deficit is in fact what they believed it to be in the fall. At the same time, we received just last week our demographer report. And so we're really trying to see the enrollment trends and projections, because while we are down a significant amount of students since 2005, we're down over 600 students. In the last 4 years, we're down about 52 FTE, which is not the same as headcount, over 4 years in the K-12 system. So while we don't ever want to be losing enrollment, we actually are not declining at the rate that in some years we've seen. We do have a low kindergarten cohort currently, but it's something we're watching because we really want to think about the closure and consolidation of schools needs to, from a cost benefit perspective, number one, actually save us money, and number two, has to make sense for our current enrollment. And our community is really hurting right now. There's a lot of division and lack of trust kind of due to the idea of scarcity. And so I feel like it is my absolute obligation to look at every single thing critically together as a team to see where our next steps need to be.
It sounds like the sort of headline that we were on right before Peter left about the idea that we're going to have to make a tough decision about closing one or two schools is obviously still out there, but you're trying to do some homework as we go forward to decide whether that's really what we have to do. Is that fair?
Yeah. So we have the school board. Peter made a recommendation to the school board to look at the closure consolidation of either Ordway or Commodore or some combination thereof, and potentially Sakai as a community. And since I've been in this position the last 4 weeks, one thing that was really, really clear is there wasn't a high level of engagement for any of our stakeholder groups. So our staff, our families, and our students. And so we've created something called the School Consolidation Advisory Committee, the SCAC, and that has 110 members. So it is stakeholders from every one of our school buildings, staff, and families. We have student representatives. We have 12 students from both Eagle Harbor High School and Bainbridge High School. And we have a few members from the city that have joined us as well. And we have team leads from all of our administrative staff, both at the district and building level, leading a series of teams looking at logistics within facilities and food service, looking at social emotional care of students and staff and families during transition, looking at equity and inclusion that will inform your decision, looking at overall budget implications, looking at long-term projections, forecast projections, and looking at schedules and staffing and what would need to happen. And so we have 5 meetings scheduled. They're about 2.5 hours each. And then we have this feedback reporting system where then we bring that to the school board. And so what we're doing is we are not the decision makers, but we are the decision informers. And so we're trying to give really clear information to the school board. And that's sort of like one parallel path to the budget, critically looking at the budget path. And both are happening in tandem. And then as we get more information, for the school board, they still have that decision out there about closure and consolidation and looking at what that actually would mean for our district.
So what's the timeline look like for you, for us as a community?
Yeah, so right now, the school board has set March 14th as the date that they would hear or make a decision about closure consolidation. What my commitment is that as I find out information and have it thoroughly vetted, like if there's additional budget information, I will always bring that to the board. And so if there's something that occurs before March 14th, then I would always bring that there. We don't have to wait until a March 14th date. But as we're still walking down that path and seeing what's necessary, it could be, especially with the consolidation closure discussion, we're going to need every bit of our time until March 14th. That's already a really expedited timeline. So it's right now it's March 14th between now and then.
As community members who are concerned and engaged, watching, are there things that we can follow or ways that we can stay informed?
Yeah, great question. Our district website is definitely the best way. Our public information officer, Aaron Bischoff, does a really great job of keeping that up to date. So that would be the first place that I would go to for information. We also, as things kind of unfold, one thing that would be important, I think, for the viewers to know, or people who are tuning in, is that there's another piece to this, which really has to do with legislative advocacy. And I see Mev on here, maybe wearing her BIP hat, which would be great because that's an important thing. But we are in a short legislative session, and we have, we've been told that there will not be a lot of funding for education, if any, this legislative session. And we know that our legislators know that we need to have a stable, structured school funding fix. Post McCleary, obviously McCleary, that was supposed to happen, and it just hasn't materialized that way. In fact, some districts are collecting, or many are collecting less now than they did pre-McCleary. And for our district, that's really, really important because we receive 75% of our funding comes from the state level. We have only 2% of our funding comes from federal funding. Depending on the year, we might get about 4% from BSF or PTO, and everything else we rely on local levies for. And so the structural fix that needs to happen at the state level really needs to make sure that there is a balance within that, funding structure. And so one thing I would say is, yes, look at our website, and then also be looking at, all of the information coming out of Olympia, and advocate. Drew Hansen, Senator Hansen, and Representative Simmons and Nance are definitely paying attention. We met with them when we were there last time, and they would love to hear from Bainbridge.
Oh, if you're watching this later on YouTube, I'll put links to those folks in the box down below on the YouTube page. And on the website, is there a drop down that we should look for to kind of follow this? I see across the top it says our districts and schools, instructions, resources.
Yeah, if you scroll down, what Erin has is kind of like a running list of like in the news or need to know BISD along the right hand side. If you scroll down a bit, and that's where all of those helpful links or information would be about budget, about levies, and about the current, like you'll have my current newsletter. I'll have any information that is shared. Also recording the school board meeting.
Great.
Yeah.
And of course, this is a time of tumult, and you're going to the voters right now.
Yep.
And so I'm sure you're counting on trying to get support so that that doesn't complicate your life further.
Yeah, it's a little bit tricky since I'm working right now and doing this in work, but I'll know that Mev will fill that in. But yes, one thing that is factual and important for everyone to know is that the support via the levies really does fund basic education where the state leaves off. And that means counselors and nurses and specialists and all of the things that really make the student day important. In technology, it's not just new hardware, new shiny things. It's paying for technology staff to be able to maximize that funding source and utilize our general general budget. It's cybersecurity measures. It's things that we need to have in place for the protection of the district. And I think one really key thing for people to know is that these aren't new funds. Yes, they're newly voted, but they're replacement. And so they're already currently in our budget. And that's a hard place to be in. And it's really critical, from the day-to-day operations of what we do here on behalf of our students. Those are important ones. So.
Okay, and I know that your time is tight, so I'm just gonna let you go. But first, I'm gonna ask if anybody has a pressing question for the superintendent. And I want to, oh yes, Jessica, maybe?
Hi, Amy. My name is Jessica Perkins. I'm with the Bainbridge Island Chamber of Commerce, the vice president, and we have put your levy information into our newsletter. I work closely with Erin. We have gotten a lot of questions about the up and coming enrollment numbers, and how are you guys gauging that for incoming kindergartners for the next 5 years? Is there any numbers that you can share?
Yeah, that's a great question. I just met actually before this with a voter who had questions, and people will email me directly and I'll be like, come in and let's talk about it. And one really important thing is next Thursday, February 8th at our board meeting, we will have a presentation from our demographer. So we had another report and analysis done on enrollment trends, and that will be shared at the February 8th board meeting. Sort of in general, as I'm sure everyone knows, we have a housing issue, the inventory and the affordability. That's something that we're watching. We do have a low kindergarten cohort right now. Our demographer, Les Kendrick, is anticipating that there might be, continued that kind of low enrollment dip for a couple of years. But then in the, I think, 26, 27, 28 years, a slight enrollment increase. And, I think that enrollment over time is something really, really important to watch. When you see the number of like 600 students down, that is a big number and it's really scary. It's also from 2005. So that's almost 20 years. And while we don't want to ever lose enrollment, I do think it's important to keep into context kind of the scale. And the educational program that we offer today is really different than what we offered in 2005. The footprint of our school buildings and what we need in our school buildings. For example, in 2005, we didn't have STEM specialists. We didn't have a STEM classroom, and now we do. And so it's not just a straight building capacity issue. We're actually at building capacity in many of our buildings, or pretty close to. So it's not that we have full buildings sitting with a lot of empty classrooms. And that's something that I think is important to note, and maybe misunderstood.
Thank you. I know we are working with healthcare as well, because not having any kind of OB is causing families that want to start, or young families to come here because they don't have the services. So
Yeah,
thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, good point.
And I know there are a lot of people who are working beyond the school district. We have great efforts from HRB and from the chamber and from others, and we're all supportive of making this a great place to live. So it's going to take all of us.
It is, and we're such a supportive community. And I don't know about you, but I love living here. I'm a mom as well. I have 2 students in the school district, and just want to do all I can to support, all of the families and all of the people that live on Bainbridge Island. And I think that bringing affordable housing, or maybe more affordable housing than currently exists, is going to be one of the main things that we can do.
Yeah, it's reversing a trend, just like the thing you were talking about with the. And it's not, I mean, we're moving in the right direction. I noticed when I was talking recently with city council members, they obviously have got the understanding that housing at various price points is very important, and they are doing their part too. Okay, thank you very much, Amii. I appreciate your time. I'll let you go.
Thanks for having me.
And Mev, maybe you might be able to talk a little bit more about where we are on the, introduce yourself a little bit and talk about where we are on the levy, which is in our, I mean, I've got my ballot in front of me.
It's in your mailbox. Hi, I'm Mev Hoberg, and I am currently the chair of the Bainbridge Island Public School Supporters, and we are a citizen group that works to support the school district when they have bonds or levies on the ballot. And I am also a parent of kids who have graduated from Bainbridge High School. I've lived here almost 25 years, and I was a member of the school board for 8 years. So I have a pretty good understanding of the schools and school finance. And I would say that you're all watching this on a computer. The district supplies no dedicated funding for technology. Computers are a way of life now. It's, no matter what our kids want to do, when they want to go to college and grad school, do they want to be a mechanic? If you take your car to the green light garage, they use computers to diagnose what's wrong and the computers to order the parts to fix it. Like, it's just, it's an undeniable fact of life now. And so we aim to train our kids for the future. And so we absolutely believe that technology funding is important. And it's not just the funding, as Amii said, to buy the laptop, it's to pay for the wires and wireless infrastructure. It pays for the people to keep everything running. And I say we, because I still identify strongly with the school district. The district, I think, are very good stewards of our technology dollars. We maintain and repair a lot of the equipment in-house rather than sending it out. We made the decision to give Chromebooks to our kids. We give 1-to-1 Chromebooks. Every kid from 3rd grade to 12th grade has a take-home device. And we chose Chromebooks rather than Windows laptops or Apple things because they are more cost-effective. With the free Google suite of software, and our kids, they have the power of the internet and the power of technology at an affordable price. So I think the district is a really good steward, pardon me, of um, of the tax dollars in that way. And then as far as the enrichment levy goes, I think you'll see surveys in the Bainbridge community time and time again showing that kids' social and emotional and mental health are paramount right now, and especially post-COVID. And our district funds school psychologists, counselors, and nurses well above the levels that the state says is allowable for a prototypical school. So we are really trying to walk the walk of taking care of our kids. So the levy funding pays for things like that that the state doesn't cover. So the thing is, it's really important to continue this funding. I think, as Amii said, this isn't new. This is a continuation of spending that the community has said that they want for years. So, pardon me again.
It's all right. We're pet friendly, at least on Zoom.
On Zoom, right? Yeah. So I
Little
would be
stricter
happy.
here at the senior center.
Exactly, allergies. I'd be happy to answer any questions anyone has about the levies. Otherwise,
Well, I'm wondering, I know that we've historically had a lot of support in this area, but I'm guessing that one of the biggest challenges is making sure that we get as voter turnout, that there's nothing really else on the ballot, and so it might get pushed to the side of your to-do list, right? That's a problem. That's a threat.
that is sometimes a threat because it's not an urgent, partisan election with a bunch of things up and down the ballot. It's just this. And so it is important to return those ballots and have your voice count. I think another thing, it's not getting as much press as some of our neighboring districts because we are simply running continuations of things we have done before, whereas some of our neighboring districts have some more expensive propositions on the ballot. And so there's a organized no campaign for the North Kitsap bond and I think Bremerton bond. So we're just not getting the airtime, I guess you could say. So it's not on people's radar. So it's important to get the vote out if we can.
And as we said, this is kind of a with this transition that Amy's helping to lead, and the challenges before us about questions of enrollment. It's a time when maybe the thought of not adding another complication to the budgeting process might be wise.
Right, and I think it's important for people to remember that these are sort of two parallel things and they are related, but the idea of the budget deficit that is somewhat based on enrollment and the fact that a lot of federal COVID funding went away, that sort of thing, is not the same as the continued levies. And I guess the doomsday message is if a $4 million deficit is bad, a $20 million deficit would be worse, because if you were to take out the $12 million of levy funding and $4 million of technology funding, that's $16 million on top of a $4 million deficit. That's $20 million that they would somehow have to make up. And that would be a 25% budget reduction. And I simply don't know what that would look like.
Yeah.
I just don't even know.
Any questions? Mev said she'd be happy to take them. I want to thank you for laying out the situation and helping to tell the whole story with what we also heard from Amii, and we'll share this information. As I said earlier, there are links in the description box below for people watching this on YouTube for the our state senator and representatives in the 23rd, and also a link to the website, the BISD303.org.
You could also, if you were so inclined, include a link to our website. That's EIPSS.org. We're Bainbridge Island Public School Supporters.
Okay.
Yeah. And we have a lot of information as well.
Okay. Thank you very much for your
Great.
time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much for including me.